on the screen. At the top of each lesson, there's, read Revelation, X number of times. In this book, it's 3 times. Read your text 3 times. And then in addition, I always say read the following at least once. And it's normally something from the Old Testament, something that pertains to the reading today that helps us get the thing we're going through. Revelation is more dependent on that than I think in most other books. Our reading today, our supplementary reading was from Daniel chapter 7. Of course, the vision of the Son of Man and the beast and those sorts of things. And I think that's where we get our strongest connection to Revelation today. Let's have a word of prayer, and we'll talk about what we saw in Revelation 13. Our kind and our merciful Father, we approach you this morning very thankful to be able to call you our Father, that we can enjoy a relationship with you based on your goodness, based on your faithfulness and your love for us. Father, without those things, we have nothing we could bring to your throne. We have nothing we could possibly sacrifice or submit to you to earn your favor. But you are a God who is merciful and just. You are a God who loved us to the point of sending your own Son to die for us, to pay the price we could not pay. And Father, we gather this morning in worship of you and in worship of Him. The same way the saints that we're going to talk about this morning, the first saints in a lot of ways, there in the Roman Empire, the way they bowed and worshiped you as well, and for the same reason. Father, help us to see the description of what they're going through and see where we can draw parallels to our own experience. Help us to be thankful that our experience doesn't seem to be as severe as theirs at this present time. Thank you for their faith. Thank you for the opportunity to have faith in you, Father. We know that salvation lies in you, and you have given us the chance through faith to be able to come and join you. Please, Father, forgive us where we've fallen short. Help us as we seek to repent and turn and grow closer to you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Big questions that come up out of chapter 13. One of them, I hope, is not who is the dragon. Okay, we talked at length about who the dragon was last week. It actually says, this is who it is, right? The great, the old and wise, the old serpent, the dragon, is Satan, right? It says there. The serpent of old who is called the devil and Satan. It's like if you don't, that's who the dragon is. Now, the rest of the figures are really where the questions lie. What's represented by these 2 beasts, one that comes up out of the sea and one that comes from the land, or the sea beast and the land beast? I think there was even a typo in our questions. I actually swapped the names of one of those, and I'll correct it when we get there. It's easy to say land and sea, because that's normally the order we think about it. But in this chapter, it's reversed. The sea beast comes first, and then the land beast comes up. Both of them serving the dragon's interests. And that's really the thing we want to keep in our mind when thinking about who these 2 are. They serve the interest of the dragon. They serve the interest of Satan. Right? They are not on God's side. In fact, they're being portrayed as the sort of opposite of God in a lot of ways. The other big question in the chapter is, what on earth do we do with 666 at the end? Right? What is the number of the beast? It is not an Iron Maiden album, okay? Even though they made a lot of money using that as their album. They're not the only ones, by the way. A more contemporary band, Avenged Sevenfold, has made a lot of money off a song called The Beast and the Harlot. Okay? It's one of those visually, and it's a rich image, and so people have latched onto it to, make money. Here's the way the chapter lines out. Okay, when you back up and you say, okay, let's ignore who is who for a minute and just see how the structure of the chapter goes. Here's how it works itself out. Twice in the chapter, in verse 1, and I forget where the second place is, but it's in the notes here in just a second. In verse 1, Daniel says, then I saw. Right? Verse 1's in a kind of a bad place for a chapter break. It would be better if that were actually the beginning of verse 1. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. And then you get a depiction of what this beast is. It's a beast with 10 horns and 7 heads, and it's got diadems on its heads and blasphemous names. The beast is composed of animal parts that are, if you've studied Daniel, familiar, right? A leopard and a bear and a lion. Okay, this beast is given authority and so on. Verses 5 through 8 describes what that beast did. You can sort of see a description of what it's going to do in the initial verses. On its heads were blasphemous names. This beast is not on God's side. It is against God. It's speaking against God. That's what blasphemy means. The whole earth is amazed and followed after him. They worship the dragon because he gave authority to the beast. And they say, who is like the beast? It's interesting. Normally you hear that phrase, who is like, and then what follows it? God. That's the way you normally hear that phrase in Scripture. Who is like the Lord? Who is like God? But here, roles have been reversed, right? Who is like the beast? He speaks arrogant words and blasphemies, and he's given authority over 42 months to act. Okay? And then in 9 and 10, you get a call to faith and endurance. Okay, here's your description of this very awful thing, verses 9 and 10. Verse 10, here's the perseverance and faith of the saints. What's neat is that when you get to verse 11, there's where the second one is. You start the same process over again. Right? Verse 1 was, then I saw, you get a beast, and you get the things that it does, and then you get a call at the end. The second half of the chapter works the same way. He starts in verse 11, then I saw another beast, this time coming up out of the earth. This beast has an animal characteristic that's not found in Daniel 7, but it is found in Revelation. What animal characteristic does this beast have? There's a lamb. Now, where else have we heard of lamb before? It's the description of Jesus, right? 4 and 5 and onward. This thing, in some sense, looks like a lamb. But how does it speak? It doesn't speak like a lamb. It speaks like the dragon. So we have an imposter of sorts, which I think that's the theme of this chapter. You have this imposter sort of beast. And it's doing things that sound very not like evil, right? For one, he's being worshipped. For two, he has a fatal wound which is healed. Does that sound familiar? A fatal wound which is then healed. Sounds like Christ, who had a fatal injury, who was then healed of it, right? Even Jesus is described as a lamb standing as though it had been slain. So this is it's some sort of, caricature almost of what Jesus, the lamb, was supposed to be. It says that he performs great signs. That's something else that we attribute with God. Fire comes down out of heaven in the presence of men. Where have you heard that story before? A story in the Bible about fire coming down in the presence of men to prove it's Elijah on Mount Carmel. Same kind of, right? He's doing the same sorts of things that normally are attributed to God. It was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast. Something that animates that which is dead is also attributed to God. He causes all, small, great, rich, poor, free, and slaves. That's normally language you hear attributed to God, but it's not. It's attributed to this beast. And he makes all these to be given a mark. Earlier in Revelation, God's people aren't given a mark. Something else happens to them. You remember what it says? Something on the forehead. There you go. Let's go back and look at it. Look at Revelation 5. I believe it's 5. Oh, I'm sorry, 7. I'm sorry, Revelation 7. Right, beginning about verse 3. The faithful, the 144,000 or the great multitude, which I believe are the same group of people, they are sealed on their forehead. And it's a different word here. Those that follow the beast are, some authors put it like they're kind of crudely kind of marked, almost like scarred or something. It's something that's not as sort of good as what's going on in Revelation 7. You see what I mean by this seems to be an imposter? It's doing a lot of the things that we have seen already happening to God's people or attributed to God, but this thing or this beast is doing that. And then at the end, I turned my, wrong mic. There we go, that one. At the end in verse 18, you get another call for wisdom and understanding this time. So instead of endurance and faith, they say, let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, right after saying, here is wisdom. The number of the beast is that of a man, His number is 666, and we'll talk about what that means in just a second. All right, your turn. What'd you see? What'd you notice? Revelation 13. What stood out to you as interesting, strange, familiar? Yes, sir.
I felt like it was interesting. The last part of verse 10 says, "This calls for patience and endurance of the faithful on the part of the saints." It almost gives an explanation. A lot of times, I guess maybe I'm not recalling any situations where Revelation's done that so far, where it explains kind of what you're reading. I mean, not in great detail, but that is what it is about.
It's
about endurance.
the purpose of why this is given to you, right? I'm describing it this way to call you to, to call you to persevere and to stay kind of strong in your faith. So we have the why here. Why was this given? Well, here was its point, right? Which saints are being called to persevere and show faith here? Say that again. The ones written in the book of life, right? The people this was addressed to, right? This wouldn't be a call for the perseverance of the saints, I don't know, a couple thousand years later. It applies forward, no, don't get me wrong. But its initial application is to these folks in their situation. And that helps us with interpretation. It had to mean something to them in their time, which is also what helps us with the number of the beast at the end of the chapter. It had to be something for them in their time, something they could understand, right? Scripture, is not given to be misunderstood. What else did you see? Yeah.
I think it's interesting in verse 5, it talks about the beast was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. And I think it's fascinating. We see God limits the impact of some of these things. In other words, limits the exposure. And I think that's an interesting pattern to witness. It's long enough to influence them to whatever, but there's still an opportunity for them to come out of it whole.
And it's good to highlight that 42 months because we've seen that time period repeatedly. And it all seems to refer to the same period of time. Right? The period of time between Jesus and final judgment is described as this bounded, not indefinite period of time, a relatively short period of time in the grand scheme of things, in which all this would go down. That helps us with interpretation too. It means that this had to be something within that block of time, right? That would have applied to them. What else? What did you see? Revelation 13. Yeah. And you're next.
It almost seems like the second beast is kind of the enforcer for the first beast.
Yeah. An enforcer, a hype man, a promoter, a supporter. You would say that the second beast endorses the first beast. That's a big word this time of year, right? Who endorses who? The second beast endorses the first, right? And the first serves the dragon. So they're all in the same awful, right, organization. One and then two, all right?
Something I never paid attention to, the mark that said the forehead or the hand. Never seen nothing about the hand.
Yeah, it's you always hear about it in terms of it's got to be on the forehead, right? Or if you watch the original Omen, it has to be in the hair, right? Anybody see the original Omen back in the 60s or whatever, 70s, whatever it was? It's a terrible movie. Don't watch it. There's a part in the movie where they think this little kid's the Antichrist, and so they go looking on his body to try to find the mark, and they actually find it in his hair, right? And it's terrible. Don't watch it, right? Terrible. Speaking of the significance of that number, when they redid the Omen more recently, guess what day they put it out? June the 6th of 2006. Makes sense, right? If you're of that persuasion. Yes, sir. None of that's true, by the way. That's all hogwash. Yeah.
The fascinating one to me is, in all of this, is the second beast, because he seems to be almost an oxymoron. He looks to be religious, but his religion is a religion of the beast.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that's the point. It's a religion. It's a religious figure. It's almost a priest not of God, not of his lamb, but of the dragon and his representative, right?
And up until now in the book, it's been the beast, and we've seen him in his power, what he's able to do. But here, this second one changes the game, if you will, because bringing in the idea of a religion that goes with the beast, not just the beast itself.
A religion that goes with the beast that ultimately serves Satan, right? Serves the dragon. We're being shown the other side of the battle in a lot of senses, right? We're being shown the major players on the other side. We've already been introduced to the players on God's side of things. There's, of course, God, and there is His Lamb, and then there's another group that we actually talked about in 11 and 12, right? We talked about the two witnesses. We talked about the church and how the church would promote the worship of the Lamb. We're being shown the other side of the battle here, right? The opposite, the negative, conflicting image. All right. Did you? No. I felt that you were gonna that you were gonna say something.
Force
Yeah.
Oh,
don't bring in the force. That's a whole
You know,
nother.
the 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 diadems. We see those numbers recurring again and again and consistently, and it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. If numbers have meaning, then what do those numbers mean? Right? 10 and 7 are numbers of totality, of perfection, of completeness, that kind of thing. 6 would be incompleteness, right?
And 7 is recurring
Usually attributed to God.
spiritual number. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, perfection, completion, which is normally attributed to God, but in this case it's attributed to this other side, right? So whatever it is that completely. All right, one more.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think the other part about the 666 is that when we're talking about that number, if you think about it, saying it 3 times enforces how much or how certain it is. If you think 6, not 7, okay? A description I remember given for years ago was, if you think about 7 being complete, 6 is failure. I don't get to completion, so I fail. So if you think about 666, translate that failure on failure on failure.
Complete, utter failure.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that leads us. I think that's the point of it. God never leaves things at 6s. I mean, 6th day of creation, there was still a 7th where He rested, right? There's the phrase in Proverbs, 6 things the Lord hates, 7 are an abomination to Him. He could have just said, I hate these 6 things, but that's not how He works. He does things in 7s, right? I think to highlight Himself. All right. Here's a few things. Actually, let's do questions first. After rereading Daniel 7, who or what's being portrayed in the first 8 verses of Revelation 13? This is where we're going to sort of highlight who is the sea beast here. Who is the beast in Daniel 7? And to remind us, we can come back over that direction, right? Okay, Daniel, remember, has a vision of 4 beasts in succession. 4 great beasts, Daniel 7 verse 3, come up out of the sea. Sound familiar? That's the same way John describes it in Revelation 13. The first was like a lion, had eagle's wings. The second like a bear. The third like a leopard. Do those animal parts make? It's the same things you see here. But then you see in verse 7, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful, exceedingly strong, with great iron teeth. It devours, breaks in pieces, and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before, and it had 10 horns. Right? How many horns does the beast have in Revelation 13? 10 horns. Right? Now, when we talked about Daniel 7, it's something Daniel does repeatedly. It's the 4 world empires leading up to the birth of the Messiah, or the Christ. So in order, they were Babylon. Who's next? The Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. Right? Daniel 2 does this with the 4th empire being the one during which the Christ comes. Daniel 7 does it. Daniel 8 repeats some of this. The 4th empire is always known to be Rome, and it's always described in these terrifying terms, like a great beast with 10 horns and power and so on. Who is the beast in Revelation 13? It's Rome. It's Rome. It's not, every interpreter has had their own version of this, but the only one that's consistent with Scripture is that it's representing the Roman Empire, which makes sense when you read its description. The Roman Empire would have been composed of fragments of all those that came before it, right? Like every great empire, it takes on, the pieces of every place that it conquers. This beast was like a leopard with feet like a bear and mouth like a lion. It has taken parts of all those empires that came before it. And yet it stands opposed to God's people. The dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. Right? He seems to have been slain and the fatal wound was healed. This was the one part that I thought curious. One of its heads as if it had been slain and his fatal wound was healed. I've heard that story, but it's not a biblical one. You know a story of a beast that has one of its heads mortally wounded, but it doesn't kill it. It comes back stronger than it was. That ringing any bells? It's the story of the Hydra, the Greek myth of the Hydra. I don't have any evidence to show that's what's being shown here, but it's familiar, right? And it would have been something from their time they would have known about, right? It's a story that the Romans would have been familiar with. Only thing I could think of. That's all I could do with that one. The whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshiped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast and who is able to wage war with him?" If this is Rome, that makes sense. Who was able to wage war against the Romans? In their time, nobody. Right? That's why they conquered the known earth, at least up to the Indus River on the eastern side. They were it. They were the world power. They stand opposed to God's people. The authority was given to them to act, and everybody's going to serve them, everybody's going to worship them. Okay, in what ways is the sea beast described like the lamb in 5:6-14? Okay, in what ways is this being described the same way as the lamb was earlier? What's that? He's worshipped is I think the big one, right? Everybody falls down before the lamb and the one on the throne earlier in the book. Here we have the same thing happening to this other side. Okay, what else?
The lamb has 4 horns.
How many horns does the lamb have?
2.
Go back and look again. Revelation 5. 4 and 5. It's one of those, it's the weird scene from the beginning of the PowerPoint, right? I think I have it still up there. Let's get past Iron Maiden, right? See or not mine, but someone's artistic representation of the lamb up there in the top right? Right? The lamb has 7 horns. We talked about that then, that it's not literal, okay? It's symbolic. The lamb's power is total. The beast is said to have 7 heads. Same idea, right? There's a totality to its power. Okay, what else? There's its own identifying mark, right? The saints are sealed earlier in the book, and the anti-saints, you might say, or those who follow this other thing, they have their own mark as well. They're identified. And a point of contrast between the two, those who follow the Lamb, where are their names written? In the Lamb's book of life, right? It says they're in our text in Revelation 13. All those who dwell on the earth will worship him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world. So here we have a contrast. God's people are the ones written in this book of life, and the worshipers of this beast and the one that follows it, they're not. They're the other half of the human population. Okay? Anything else you noticed?
Yeah. The other things that the interesting part to me about the number 1 on the lamb here is the beast has more horns than the lamb does,
Mm-hmm.
which almost indicates, if you think about the horns representing kings as it did in Daniel 7, then it seems like this second beast, his span of time will be shorter because he only has 2 horns, as in 2 kings or two leaders, rulers that do this enforcement of this lamb beast, if you want to call it.
Yeah, it's definitely inferior. It's a cheap imitation, is what I kept reading. Yep. Okay. Who would worship the sea beast, and how is this sort of worship carried on even today? Who are the ones worshiping, following, serving this first one? Yeah.
All the earth, everybody.
Everybody else. right?
Yeah.
Everybody who's not written in the book. Does this go on today? Do people fall and worship, world powers, you might say? Mm-hmm. Yeah, real common. It happens. All right, go ahead.
We don't have a king today. We don't have an emperor today. But we do have a culture that tells us what we are to do or how we're supposed to live and so on. And so in that respect, even within the absence of a formal single head that endures, we still have that pressure today.
Yeah.
It's a pressure to conform, if you will.
Ours, in terms of, the United States has been thought of as a world superpower now for, quite a long time. We're kind of the superpower in a lot of ways. Our temptation will be the same as those who lived under Roman rule, right? If you're in, I don't know, Mozambique, right? You're probably not tempted to think that Mozambique runs the world. But you are here, right? And you're sort of given to that persuasion to think, well, who is like this, or who is like us? Didn't used to be that way, but it is at this point. Yeah.
You know what I think is fascinating is you look at the beast and those attributes that it has aren't like a sea creature at all. It's like an earth creature, okay? And so I was trying to find some commentaries that talked about this because it confused me a little bit. And one of the commentaries made the point that, yeah, they look like land creatures, but the culture said things coming out of the sea were scarier for the people at this time. Like, and so it would have been more terrifying for it to come from the sea. I don't know that to be true, but this particular commentator said that it would have been more terrifying to the people of that time.
Yeah, and you're also dealing with really old religious stories about where the gods came from.
Sure.
Right? Baal was said to have come up out of the sea, right? And there were other gods that sort of had that same behavior. So it's maybe playing off of old built-in stories they've heard, right? Okay. 4. What sort of words does the sea beast speak, and what do those words mean? Right? So what kind of words does he say? Blasphemous. So blasphemous words are words spoken against God, right?
Or how about this? Words spoken that I am God.
Which would be of itself an attack on God. To say I am.
That would be blasphemy as well, because it seems to me like maybe that's the wording that's spoken is that I am God.
I think that's what the people say here, right? Who is like the beast? It's the same language we said a moment ago that's said of God. It's what they accuse Jesus of. Blasphemy. Why? Because he said things that only God could say, like your sins are forgiven and so on. Yep. One more. Yep.
I thought it was interesting too. It says that he was given power to make war against the saints and conquer them. He was also given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Which you think about Jesus, like he was given all authority on earth and in heaven.
Yep.
His description is similar, but it's not in heaven. It's only on the inhabitants of the earth.
Yeah. This is a usurper, right?
And this is only for a time. He's only given it for a time until God says time's up.
Jesus has it forever, right?
Think about all the movies you've watched.
Oh, I don't want to.
And in the past, you've seen, that we do things for the glory of Rome.
Oh yeah.
That idea, and they had the Olympiads, and they reminded you that glory is fleeting. It's always has to be renewed. But I'm just saying, the culture of that day, that Rome is the greatest thing, and everything we do should glorify and support Rome. The people were trained and told that's the way they should.
Rome above all, right? And then, do I get to the land beast yet? Yeah, there you go. Speaking of which, what organization in Roman society would have been explicitly tasked with making sure that what you just said happens? The promotion that Rome is the greatest. The military would be sort of the backbone behind that, right? The big stick.
The emperor.
You have the emperor, but then you have this something that has arisen during this time period that's explicitly tasked with saying Rome is awesome. You need to follow and worship her. It was emperor worship. right? Temples built not to gods of the Romans, but to the Romans themselves, to the Roman emperors, right? We talked about that, it's been a couple months ago, I guess, but right when we began the study thinking about what does this book mean, we noted all, those cities of Asia that we went through, they were cities in which temples to Roman emperors had been built, and they'd been noted for being so, right? So then come back to Revelation 13. We have the dragon, who is obviously Satan. We have the beast, who I believe is Rome, the first one. And then we have this organization or this thing that promotes worship of the second thing. It's emperor worship. Right? What's that?
Which is why you have a national religion. National religions have never been created to save people's souls. They've been created to propagate that government. And that's something, David and I were talking about this on the way here. We need to realize there are a lot of people who are very strongly convinced that America should and needs to be a Christian nation. You need to understand, we're not mainstream Christianity.
Yeah.
If America was a Christian nation, we're in trouble because we don't fit the mold that a lot of people call that. And that's scary.
We would-
when I look at the kids, our kids.
We would convert people to Christ.
Yeah.
Right? We're not converting them to American culture and that sort of thing. But again, back in this time, we have this second beast who comes up. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. So he's been endowed by the first with authority to act and to do. That's exactly emperor worship. He makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast. That's what was going on. That is where they lived. That's the world they lived in. That's what's happening right there. They are being told they must worship the Roman emperors, and there are temples built to that effect. Right? He performs great signs. They are even imitating powerful religious figures, doing things that appear to prove their point. Right? It was given to him, it says there, to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and cause as many who do not worship the beast to be killed, right? It would begin to be known that this is how you moved about in Roman society. If you rejected emperor worship, it was considered treason as well as apostasy, right? If church and state are separated, you can't accuse someone of the same sin on both sides. But in this society, you could. Treason and apostasy are one and the same in this culture, because worshiping the emperor and having your allegiance to the Romans are the same to them, right? Now, Paul would distinguish between the two, right? We honor the emperor, he would say in Romans, but we serve Jesus. Right? We give our allegiance to Rome in that way. Yeah.
Many years ago, I heard a man that had traveled to Russia and was preaching there.
Yeah.
And one of the points he made that I would have completely missed, that when you're born in Russia, you are born a member of the Russian Orthodox Church. To accept Christianity is unpatriotic. You no longer love your country. If you say, I'm going to do this instead of, even though the Russian Orthodox Church was not, no one actually ever walked into a church. It was part of who you were.
Right.
And it was part of your identity.
Interesting. Okay. We talked about what its mission seems to be. It's to get people to worship the first beast. In what ways would the land beast convince the men to worship the sea beast? So in what ways would Roman imperial worship convince people to worship Rome? Well, they would do all kinds of stuff. They would do signs. They would make images. They would cause those to speak. They would kill the ones who don't worship it. They would make people wear a mark on their forehead or on their arm, and no one can buy or sell unless you have the mark, and so on, right? Total allegiance in every aspect of your life to Rome was their point. They were to Rome what the Pharisees were to Judaism, in a lot of senses, right? Yeah.
Let's say, if you look at their means, their methods of operation, they have signs and wonders and so on, and so they have a display of power or authority, right? And when that doesn't work, brute force is pretty good,
Yeah.
Put a mark on you and you can't do business, or you basically can't do things to live if you don't have this mark.
Yep. You give your allegiance or else, right? You can do it willingly, or you can do it by force. That's the world they're living in, okay? Which when you get your mind around this is the world they're living in, suddenly those two calls to faithfulness kind of make sense here, right? There's a call to perseverance and faith, and there's a call to understanding and wisdom. This is where you are. This is where you live. You're going to need those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and this even reminds us, clear back to the first chapter, when he goes through the first images to the 7 churches, and each of the churches, they're given their report card at the beginning. And you ask the question, why give the report card before you give the revelation? Well, here you go, because you need to understand how you are now to appreciate what you're about to get.
Yep. They need sort of an update on their status, you might say. Okay, we talked a bit about that. We talked about the difference between the mark and the sealing, right? The mark identifies those who worship the beast. The sealing identifies those who worship Christ. And the point in both cases, it's an identifier, right? And it's something they would have understood. It's a mark. We talked about the sealing back when we talked about Ezekiel, right? The faithful of God were sealed in Ezekiel 8, 9, 10, 11. The rest are not, and they're actually called out for that. Okay, I did want to do this one real quick. So in chapter 11, we had the 2 witnesses, which we identified as a representation of the church and what they were doing. They were spreading the message of the Lamb. They had powers that made them look like Moses and Elijah, in a sense. They were promoting the worship of the Lamb. They were cut down, but then they were raised, and then they were victorious. There are a lot of comparisons between the 2 witnesses and the land beast. This is where I made a mistake in the book. I put sea beast here, and that was a mistake. It was the second one I wanted to highlight. The 2 witnesses are given a period of time to do what they're doing, and the land beast is also given that same period of time, 42 months in both cases, right? You can see that. The 2 witnesses, if someone speaks against them, they breathe fire out of their mouths and they consume those people. The land beast has fire, and he does miracles that are attributed to fire as well. The 2 witnesses speak for God, and the land beast causes the images of the beast or of the dragon to speak. In both cases, they're a spokesman, they're a representation. The 2 witnesses kill their foes in 11 and verse 5. The land beast causes those who refuse to worship the dragon to be slain. Right? The 2 witnesses in 11 and verse 10 are called the true prophet or true prophets. Later in Revelation, in chapter 16 and chapter 19, this beast will be called the false prophet, explicitly, right? So if we're not sure what it means now, we're definitely told later what this thing is. It's a false prophet. It's a religion of sorts. Yeah.
I think one of the points you can make is the most dangerous heresies are always the ones that look right. They're close. We're not worried about people, or well, I shouldn't say that. That's not fair. The person who denies that God exists is a very different issue than the person who just wants to change things a little bit. That's much more dangerous.
Yep.
You can say the other part, if you think about this period of time, and I look at the historical period, that the church went out and the church grew before the persecutions began. And then the persecutions lasted for a while, and then they ended as well. And so you can see the 2 witnesses representing the growth of the church, the gospel being preached, and that nobody was able to stand against it for a time. And now Rome is coming along with emperor worship and will subdue the Christian, the growth of the gospel will be now subdued until such time that emperor worship ends finally.
Tend to agree. All right. One more question, then I gotta hurry up. I asked this about where the 2 servants of the dragon come from. One comes from the sea and one comes from the land. If you back up to Revelation 10, verses 1 and 2, right? There is an angel who is holding the little scroll of judgment, right? The final, so you know, here's the end, how it's going to work out. Where is he standing? 1 foot in each, right? So even though we have these enemies that have arisen from sea and from land, we already have someone who stood on both and I have the message of judgment, right? It's like we describe the victory and now we're going to describe the enemy, right? It's sort of out of order, but that's sort of the way this goes. We shouldn't have to worry about these 2 in the ultimate, are they actually going to beat God and Jesus? Well, no. Victory has already been assured. Now we're going to come back and we're going to describe who's fighting. All right, some things they would have gotten from this, and I'm sorry, I got to go through this real quick. This was the best explanation I heard for this. The dragon and the two beasts are cheap imitations of God, the Lamb, and the church. Right? God alone is to be worshipped. And what do you see being called for in chapter 13? Worship of the dragon, right? And then you see the Lamb sort of being the figurehead, the representation of God, and and His servant. And then you see the sea beast is the representation, the entity that's representing the dragon. And then you see that which is meant to promote worship of the Lamb and of the one on the throne, the church. And then you see this other thing that's promoting worship of something else, right? They're being set up as opposing forces, not as equals, right? But as here's the other side of the battle, right? We wage not war against flesh and blood, right? That idea. It's this other side of the conflict. And so for the Romans, it's the idea of for the Roman Christians, where's your allegiance going to lie? Is it going to be in the Roman part or is it going to be in the Christian part? Are you going to bow to emperor worship because that's your culture? Or are you going to say, no, I serve a risen Savior? And based on the chapter, life's going to get pretty difficult for you if you choose Christ. Even to the point of not being able to go to the store, we would say. Can't go to the market because you don't, it's known that you don't worship the emperor. Right? It makes it real awkward when you're talking to, I don't know, Romans. What do you mean you don't worship? That whole thing would have went by. One big lesson here is whatever power Romans been given, God gave it to them, and only God can recall it. Rome's in charge because God put it there. It doesn't mean God made Rome do what it does, but God gave Rome its authority. It's chosen to mistreat that, misapply it, misuse it, and one day that will be taken from them. You probably heard the phrase, right? When in Rome, what? Except if you're a Christian. Because what the Romans do is, at this point, worship themselves. They worship the emperor, right? And the Roman Christians, they couldn't get involved in that, right? They had to hold strong and not do as the Romans do. And that's why I think they're being called to faithfulness and endurance and wisdom and understanding in the chapter. Understand where you are and where you live, right? Open your eyes, see what's going on. Anyway, and that's that. Okay, how does it apply to Jesus? I told you I was going to do the 666 thing, and so I want to do that. Here is, boy, you can really get in the weeds, okay? When you start asking different people, what does 666 mean? Always a good source, Jesus mathematics. End times prophecy, numeric alphabet calculation tools. And it's probably a little small, but there are some real zingers in here. I'm guessing they went with English gematria. Gematria is assigning numerical values to letters, right? And so if a certain name adds up to a certain number, well, it's got to be the mark of the beast. And there's some good ones on here. Monsanto is the beast. RFID scanners are the beast. Sharia laws are the beast. Aliens the beast. Vaccinations the beast. And I love this one at the bottom, right? Almost 666, but not quite. It's like, look, we really tried to make this the Antichrist, and it didn't quite add up right, but it's close, so we're going to put it on there anyway. And it just so happens to be Osama bin Laden or Hitler. And I'm like, which one? Because those are very different people.
Can we just call it a rounding error?
I'm telling you, all right? This site that I found is a little better because they at least recognize that, okay, maybe we're adding up the letters of the wrong language, right? There's always that. English didn't exactly exist in the first century. So then they have tables, right? So there's a column on the left, which is Jewish gematria, and then there's English gematria. It's not Jewish, it's Hebrew. That all aside, right? And you've got some good ones. Elon Musk Grimes is apparently the Antichrist. The Prophet Muhammad, God in a deck, fire, dragon, birth code. The Hitler. You name it, right? It's all hogwash, and here's why. Okay. The number of the beast was never intended to represent a human. When you go back and look at the Greek, the original text, it doesn't say this is the number of a man, even though it might say that in your English Bible. It says it's the number of man, or it's a human number, not a number attributed to a human. So there's the first error, right? It's not a person. Secondly, It was something they would have understood. If the number of the beast represented Osama bin Laden, it's going to be absolute madness to the people who read it for the first time. They're going to go, who is this, right? And by the way, Nero doesn't work either. It only works if you misspell Nero. That's true. Plus, it's a symbolic number, and here's what I think it gets to, and this is where we were talking about just earlier. 6 is a number that represents failure and incompleteness. In its context, the number 666 refers to that land beast, that worship of the emperor, that human religion, right? Imperial worship is being identified as being human. And what's the greatest indictment of something to show it to be false? It came from a person, not from God. The Jews knew this, right? They asked, remember Jesus asked the Jews, the baptism of John, whence did it come? From heaven or from men? From heaven or from earth? Because if it came from men, it's foolishness. If it came from God, it had to be followed. I think this is Revelation's way of telling us that this imperial worship that you're worried about, that's plaguing you right now, it's not God. It's not from God. It's not His plan. He's identifying it as this is something that's not of God. All right? That's my swing at it. All right. We're out of time. Next week, chapter 15. There's a bunch of stuff. All right? It all thrown together. So we're going to talk about it, Lord willing, then.
15 or 14?
I'm sorry, 14. Lesson 15, chapter 14. There you go. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.